Greetings, everyone. It is my favorite time of the month. It is the second session of an awesome two-part session of Being Ground at Work. So, welcome to you all. If you were here 2 weeks ago for part one, you know that this is going to be yet a fire one. More nuggets is going to be dropped today for sure. But if you weren't here and you missed it, go catch it on the replay. But still stay tuned with us because we'll revisit some of that topic and then move through it even deeper today. But for those of you who were with us, I want to remind you of this beautiful young woman. And those of you for the first time, I'm going to introduce you to Amanda Muhammad, who is an international mindfulness based stress management and psychologically safe consultant based in Dallas, Texas. She is currently pursuing her PhD in business psychology. She holds a master's in organizational leadership and a bachelor's degree in management and leadership. Amanda is a certified mindfulness trainer, compassion fatigue trainer, and a yoga instructor. Amanda is the founder of Mako Mindfulness, a boutique professional development company supporting schools and organizations globally. Through innovative training programs and resources, Mako Mindfulness equips employees with tools and strategies needed to better manage stress and foster psychological safety in the workplace. As an experienced and highly sought after facilitator, and I said it the first time, highly sought after, I sought after her several times, and it was to the great benefit of my teams globally. So, highly recommend that after you listen to this session, you connect with Amanda because Amanda designs and delivers engaging workshops that empower individuals to take care of themselves and each other. Amanda's expertise lies in teaching practical evidence based skills and developing frameworks that change the way people process and respond to stressful situations. Welcome back, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, yes. And as I said 2 weeks ago, had to have you. Amanda was a guest of mine about a year or two ago, and I had to have her back. And we all know because we are in stressful times, whether it's what's surrounding us socially here in the US, it could be what is surrounding you personally. It could also be what's surrounding you in your professional environment, in your corporate space, or whatever your professional industry is. And all those things piled upon each other can create a sense of, oh my gosh, what do I do next? And that's what we talked about the first time, right, Amanda? We talked about the situation we're bombarded with today. Can you revisit a little bit of what we shared a couple weeks ago about that space?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talked about just how much information that we're getting that's coming in, the news and the conversations that we're having on the other side of it, and the way that that is causing us to obviously have an increase in stress, but the impact that it has on our ability or inability to better take care of ourselves, to see hope, to see light, to see the good things that are also going on, and just those really real consequences that come with just consuming everything that we have going on. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know those of you that follow me know that I say all the time, who you are personally is who you are professionally. And there's
Mhm.
a distinct connection. Wouldn't you agree, Amanda, when you're taking in all of this and creating the stress, there's a connection to how you show up in your professional environment.
Yeah, 100%. It's a big part of, I teach on two main topics. There's stress management and there's psychological safety. But I always say there's no sense in us talking about psychological safety if we're not addressing stress, because the lens in which we see the world, it matters. And when we're not taking care of ourselves and pouring into ourselves, or when we're not even cognizant, we're moving so fast that we're not even aware of how things are impacting us, we also may not be aware of how it's impacting the way that we're showing up in our work
Mm,
environments, the way that we're interacting with our loved ones and with our teams. Like, you can just get this tunnel vision when you are in
yeah.
like fight or flight and you are just going. You're just trying to make it to the end. Like you are in a survival state and you can't see everything else. You can't see the damage that you've done by going just so fast. So absolutely, they are connected. And the more that we take care of ourselves, the better that we can show up in any environment that it is that we walk into.
Exactly. And you said something a couple of weeks ago, a phrase that I absolutely love. You
Mhm.
said what you focus on expands.
Mhm.
So explain that again, share that again, because that was wonderful when you said it.
Yeah, I think this applies to anything, right? Linda, before we jumped on this call, as always, we're always just like talking. And, if you even look at the energy between us as we were just talking about, different things that we were experiencing and lessons that we were learning, as we focused on that, that expanded, right? Like that whole conversation, our smiles got bigger, we're laughing, we're excited about things.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, the more attention that we give something, the more that we get of that. And there's neuroscience behind that that shows that when we focus on something, that becomes what our mind continues to see more of, right? Like our reticular activator picks up on certain things. So one thing I know for sure is when I wake up in the morning and I look at the news and then I scroll on social media and I see more negative things, it's just my thoughts around that, they just grow and they get worse
Mm,
and they get worse. And then I have a conversation with a friend and we catch up on everything that happened in the news and it just gets bigger. And then,
yeah.
I go home and the doom just gets bigger, right? And it's the same thing on the other side. So on the other side of our conversation, I'm really excited. And then, then I leave here and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go work on this, and more excitement grows. And so where we put our energy and attention, it really does matter. And I think it's so important to know the power and the agency that we have to be
Mm,
intentional about the things that we pay attention to, knowing that they can ultimately expand. I'll add one more thing. In the main framework that I teach when I talk about stress management, we look at this brain behavior feedback cycle, right? And so you have stress that you may experience, and then you have the way that you respond to the stress that you experience. And then oftentimes, because of the way that you responded to that stress, like you take that into the next environment. So you have a project, it stresses you out, you procrastinate, that procrastination has you more stressed at work. Now you're stressed at work and you take it home. Now you're stressed at home, you bring it back into work. Again, this is what we're focusing on expanding, just
wow.
stuck in
Yes.
a cycle, right? And so it's all about when we notice ourselves going down, going in a trajectory that we no longer want to be on, having tools in place to interrupt that cycle. But we have to decide that it's not worth the consequence that can come with giving it that much energy and attention.
Yeah, and I think, oh my God, what you just said, I told you guys the nuggets here. What you just said is the decision that we have to make, right? It's
Right.
the awareness. And I know I shared in the first session the depression I was going through last year, and the fact that, first of all, I wasn't even aware I was depressed. And then once that awareness was brought forward, and I started doing something about it, I realized, to your point, the change in the atmosphere around me, right? Where people were saying, "Oh my gosh, Linda, you're smiling more. Oh, Linda, you're back," kind of, right? And I didn't know I went anywhere. But to your point,
Yeah.
I was so focused. I was working hard. I was just, hey, I'm going to get through today. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to get this done. And then that sunk me into that depression even deeper. To your point, that negativity grew. I got sucked into that little hole and I lived there for several months, a good half
Mhm.
the year, until I sought help and
Mhm.
started coming out of that. And then when I was doing the work, to your point again, you, it expanded in the positive direction,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I love what you just said, because it's the awareness. We have to be willing to be aware and to call a thing a thing. Like I like to say that, to call, I'm stressed,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not just working hard. And sometimes maybe that's the case, but I'm stressed. And so, Amanda, can you share a little bit more? Because I definitely want to get into the actionable tools, because that's what I love about doing these two-part sessions is we talk about the why first, and then we get to talk about the what and the how second. But before we get there, could you help a little bit around why we sometimes struggle in even the awareness, being willing to identify it? What are some of the struggles you think are around that?
I think one of the largest struggles is that we're just moving too fast.
Mm.
Oftentimes, what can come up when you slow down can be really scary.
Ooh.
So if we stay, if we stay really busy, and just keep things in motion. You've got so many things that are on your plate. You don't have time to slow down. But what ends up happening is that's when you start dropping all of the plates, right? And so
Yes.
I think that would be what I would say is like one of the largest things is that we're just moving too
Yeah.
fast to really be in touch with what we're experiencing, right? So what ends up happening too when we're in that stress state, we're not connected to how things are actually making us feel. We're not connected to how we're responding to different things. We're just going through it so fast. We're not taking time to reflect. We're not taking time to really, dissect the things and why we chose to respond that way. And so, as we move into tools, that's definitely going to be one of my biggest things that I would say is finding ways to pause and slow down and really reflect on the outcomes that you're experiencing and get in alignment with what's going to give you the outcomes that you ultimately want versus
Want.
living in this cycle of what's handed to you, right? Like we kind of take it all in stride and this is just like this is what's supposed to happen, like we don't have any choice in it.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. And you said something so powerful because not only does it impact ourselves, we impact the people around us.
Yeah.
So whether it's your loved ones, your kids, your team members, the people that engage with you, and you don't even realize it at times, right? There's times when you don't, because you're so, to your point, Amanda, you're moving so fast.
You're moving.
And then I think you said something that I know I have experienced in my past. Because if you do slow down and recognize, if you take a minute to pause, you're like, well, okay, I wasn't ready to see that.
Yeah.
Okay, that scares me right there. You know what I'm saying? And I
Mhm.
think that's real.
Yeah.
But wouldn't you say, and now we're going to slide into the healing piece of this and some of the tools, wouldn't you say, though, that that fear and of recognizing the false evidence appearing real? I love that definition of fear, but that's kind of healthy, right? In the first step, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think, that's a big part of it is even if it does feel uncomfortable, it's like recognizing the power in just like noticing where
Yes.
you are and the power of your system, how intelligent your system is to be trying to
Oh my
warn you
gosh.
of these signs. It's the same system that's going to help you survive if you're being chased down by a lion or, if a car jumps out in the middle of the road. Like that same system is the one that is trying to warn you and give you these signs. So I think slowing down and recognizing the intelligence, the wisdom that is in you and allowing yourself
Mm.
connect with that is extremely powerful.
Yes, I mean beyond powerful, and yeah, it's and because your body will tell you, your mind, your body, it will tell you. I mean,
Mhm.
and if you're a hard head, it'll
Yeah.
tell you in the biggest ways. You
No,
know
it
what I mean?
absolutely will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even, in a lot of my trainings, so with my stress management piece, obviously a big part of what I teach is mindfulness-based stress management. And a
Mm,
big part of that is recognizing that stress doesn't just live in your mind, it's also in your body. So when your neck
mm,
feels aches, when you're tense in your shoulders, when your belly is hurting, every single time you go into a meeting or you have to go and talk to someone, your body will speak to you, but you have to slow down and get quiet enough to hear it. And when you
mm,
can connect to that, like there's just so much wisdom that's there that can also help you know how to move next. So you have to slow down enough to be able to hear it, but then beyond that, it's also being able to explore and know, okay, what actually works for me? Like I
yes.
know what tools work for me, and the same things that work for someone else may not work for somebody else. But I literally
Right.
keep a card on my desk that just reminds me when I'm in that moment to take that check in, these are the things that I know work for me. And I'll
Wow.
more than happy to share with you, but then I don't have to think about it. It's one less thing that I think about.
Exactly.
I
It's
know
one
exactly
less thing.
what calms me down, and then I can move into that next state and get strategic or whatever it is that I need to do so I can keep moving throughout my day. But when you're not in touch with yourself and when you don't know yourself, you don't know what you need, you're just going to be still just you're just out here floating, and it's very counterproductive. So
It's extremely counterproductive. And those of you that follow me probably have already got the connection. So you guys know that I focus on emotional intelligence and executive presence.
Mhm.
What did Amanda just talk about? Self-awareness,
Yeah.
true self-awareness. And I mean, this stuff is, when you peel back the onion of emotional intelligence, it's pretty deep. And if
Mhm.
you really want to have a high level of emotional intelligence. The self awareness is the first pillar, and truly knowing that you know who you are, the
Mhm.
triggers, why you're in this stressful situation, and what Amanda's going to share here as we move into those things that work for you to
Mhm.
deal with those triggers and to deal with stressful situations so that you don't continue to be counterproductive.
Right.
So let's get into some of those ideas because I mean this is so good, Amanda, and it's so necessary, right? And yes, are we in stressful times globally? Sure we are. But
Mhm.
I would say that this is something that is foundational, that we need at all times, this level of awareness around stress management and psychological safety. So why don't we kick off with some of the tools and methodologies that
Okay.
those of us that are listening in can see what works for them.
Yeah, sure thing. So I know one of the things I've already mentioned, with this self-awareness piece and the slowing down, how do we do that? I would highly recommend doing things like mindfulness practices such as breathing exercises, but I also bring in breathing and stretching because like I said, your stress isn't just in your mind, it's also in your body. And so finding opportunities throughout the day, it doesn't have to take much time. But even just doing breathing exercises, whether that's breathing in for a count of four, breathing out for a count of four, listening to a 5 minute meditation, doing an 8 minute yoga break on YouTube between, a meeting. All of those things can be ways that you can begin to build your capacity to slow down and become more aware of how you feel. And so I would be more proactive than reactive, is what I always recommend,
Mm,
and just start putting those things in place, even when you especially when you're having a great day, so that when you have the hard day, you can default down to these patterns that your body knows works for you. So yeah, first thing is find ways to slow down. And that doesn't have to look like breathing exercises. I mean, it's easy because you're already doing it, so it's just asking you to do it just a little bit more intentionally. But I mean, I slow down when I color, when I paint, when I do yoga. Like there's a lot of you can do mindful walking, right? I even at this point on a good week, I carve out 2 days a week that I go to a meditation class and I skip the walking part. I sit for 40 minutes each time. So I do at least 80 minutes of silent seated meditation, and it has done
wow,
wonders for me. Nothing guided, just me there with my thoughts and allowing them to pass and bring them down. That has really helped me with my self awareness. It has really helped me with being able to hear the tells from my body. I was
hmm,
sick recently. I was able to catch it immediately, whereas before, I don't think that I was catching it so fast because I was moving, and it's just like, oh, I'm
yep, yeah.
no, I knew immediately. I was like, oh, my body, like I could tell where it was. So I would say finding those different ways to slow down to help build your self awareness. And with that, you can do things like journaling. You can take that journal to your therapist, to your coach, and unpack those things so that you can start to pay attention to the patterns that you're seeing and how they are impacting your outcomes. So I would start.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Love that start. Love that start. So once you say that you've put together a way that you can become aware.
Hmm.
Now, as you're aware, I've got these because I know you got your little card there, so you got things you do.
Yeah.
I become aware of, the stressful situations, or I know what the triggers are. I've
Hmm.
done some breathing, or let's say I may not be able to do that in that situation. Let's give an example that I'm in a team meeting and it's become a bit charged,
Yeah.
highly charged, and I can't go stretch. I can't necessarily sit, close my eyes. I could breathe, to the count of four, but what would be some other ways that we could try to manage stress when, let's say, live ways, when things are happening and it's live, and okay, I need to dial it back so I can move forward in a
Mhm.
way that truly represents me in the best light possible.
Yeah. I know one of the things that has been extremely helpful for me is, well, obviously, I mean, I can't express breathing exercises enough because it's something that's tangible that no one has to know that you're doing, and you can do it really quickly. And there's a number of things that you can do within that. You can do static breathing. You could even do shoulder movements, breathing in, bringing your shoulders up, breathing out, bringing your shoulders down. You could do sun breaths, breathing in, bringing your fist to a close, breathing out, releasing. But on the other side of that, there are other practices that you can do, things like shifting your perspective. I know for me, I have to kind of remind myself, like, okay, I come down and I'm like, I have time on the other side of this meeting to process this, to handle this, and to decide what I
Hmm.
actually want to do. So everything doesn't, just because it feels like an emergency in your system doesn't mean that you have to put the fire out right in that moment. What's most important is you've caught it, and now you can bring yourself down. Now, one thing that I would suggest, because everybody's resources are going to look different, what I do
Sure.
on my card, I have 3 physiological resources and I have 3 psychological resources.
Ah,
So, because again, you've got stress in your mind and you've got stress in your body. So my mental resources that I typically lean on, or the psychological resources that I typically look at, are going to be things like meditation. They are prayer. And it's also listening to motivational speeches. For you, it could be something like music. It could be something, whatever allows you that like mental flexibility that just kind of helps to ground you in that moment. And
yes.
then on the physical side, I love walking, I love dancing, I love yoga. So those are the things that I know, like if I have the time and space, I can lean on those. And they all have varying amounts of time and resources. So maybe you don't have time to sit and go into your war room for prayer, but you have a prayer. I have all kinds of things that I have that sit on my desk in those moments where I can just kind of look at it quickly and get that gem, and I
Yes.
sit on the other side. But I think the number one most important thing that you can do is settle your system in those moments when you're escalated, is to catch your breath, catch it, know that this has triggered you, know that this is taking you off course, catch
Yep.
it and put it in a place so that you can, lean on your resources on the other side of that.
And I think what you just said is so critical because we believe sometimes we have to address things immediately.
Oh yeah.
Just, right when they happen, we have to address them. And I have found 9 times out of 10 when we do that, we don't like when we think about it afterwards, we're like, man, why did I say that? Or
Yeah.
why did I do that? Or
Yeah.
I wish I could not, or it doesn't work out. I mean, I had someone mention that to me not long ago. They were like, Linda, I would just go straight to him and say, okay, what made you think you could do that? Or what made you think you could say that to me?
Yeah.
Or don't you think that's crazy? And I said to them, well, how's that working for you? And it wasn't working very well for them.
Yeah.
And so I think what you just said is so powerful because there's nothing that is that, I don't believe, that critical in the moment, especially when you're so amped up that
Hmm.
you have to address it then.
Hmm.
Even if it's, I need to pause, can we revisit that? I found myself say that. Can we revisit that topic later? Or
Yeah.
can I come back to that?
Yeah.
Especially if I can feel something internally based on either body language I saw or something somebody said that they came left. And I was like, okay, you really didn't have to do, okay, Linda, can we come back to that?
Yeah.
That breathe. Oh, can we come back to that? So I think that point you made is so valuable that we don't I think we don't pay enough attention to because we think we have to, I'm gonna address
Yeah.
them now.
Exactly. Well, that deep breath, or however you get to your pause and grounding yourself in that moment, is the difference between reacting and responding to something.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I want to say,
Okay, hold on. See, you get these nuggets, and then you just want to go on. See that? Come on, stop it. Okay, so the difference between reacting and responding. I love that
you
because
have
there is
to,
a difference.
yes, and you have to give yourself that space. But this is also why when I talk about stress management, I talk about that proactive approach, because the thing is when you're in that moment, it's probably not the time where you're, like I said, you're not going to be able to go to your war room or do yoga
Right.
like when you're in the middle of the meeting. So it's about how you prepare yourself as you enter those rooms.
Yes.
How do you prepare yourself for the stress that it is inevitably going to happen? Right? So it's about the things that you're constantly putting in place so that when that stress inevitably spikes, you your brain knows how to calm yourself down, and you know that you have tools and resources, and it defaults back to that. So when I teach
Yes.
about mindfulness practices, I teach about things like gratitude and affirmations and journaling and perspective and breathing and stretching, and that's the framework that I work off of. But that's why you're constantly doing those things, so that when it happens, you've already put so much in place that your perspective is immediately like, you know what, I don't have to handle it in this moment. And I know it feels like an emergency, but it's also not. And like you can reach that perspective because
Yes.
all along you've been practicing that perspective. But if you have never done these things before and you're in the middle of a meeting and somebody pisses you off,
Yeah.
what? And somebody says, "Oh, you need to take a deep breath," you're gonna want to like go off on that person,
You're
right?
going to go off on them. Exactly. Or they, aren't you, or you're being aggressive, or aren't you overreacting, or
Right.
why are you so angry? Then that ticks
Exactly.
you off even more.
It
So,
is.
you know what I mean? And I know that what you're talking about works because when I was at Meritor, you did that exact type of practices with my global team. And I will never forget it. I know some of the guys in the room, they were like, oh my gosh, what are we breathing? And what's the little tone thing? And then you would send the messages and emails. But I will tell you after well, first of all, at the end of the 2 or 3 days with you, I got messages from people, oh my gosh, Linda, I can see how this is going to change my life. But then it was like 90 days, 6 months later, because you would send the emails and they would, to your point, proactively create their mindfulness practices. I can't tell you, Amanda, and those of you that are listening, the number of my team members that said it changed their life for their personal relationships. It made them healthier. Their blood pressure came down. They handled conflict resolution at work much more productively. So, I mean, those of you that are listening, you might say, "Oh, mindfulness. Oh, it seems kind of no." I mean, it works. This stuff works, and I wish I had it earlier in my career. I met Amanda later in my career. Still helped me though, because I was, those of you that, aspire to climb the ladder, be careful what you wish for just because the box moves. That stress level
Yeah.
can, it can move up with it. And so, having Amanda in my life later in my career has been invaluable in helping me. So when you hear she's giving you these tools and tips, I highly, 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 highly recommend you
Well,
take her seriously and really adopt these.
thank
So,
you.
Amanda, we're going to be wrapping here in a few minutes. Is there any other methodologies or tools you wanted to add or any closing comments? And I want to make sure that people know how to connect with you too.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
mm-hmm.
Think there's so many things, and again, what I'm saying about being proactive is just making sure that you are actively building in resources for yourself throughout your days and throughout your weeks. Do not wait until it gets to the point where you're already overwhelmed to be trying to figure out what works for you. Like start now. When you find, you have a little bit of space in your day, you take 5 minutes of that space and just start practicing those exercises that work for you. It can be as simple as when you wake up in the morning, 3 things that you're grateful for. But also don't sleep on the things that are a little, there's things that you can do individually, but community is huge. Finding outlets for
Mm,
like creativity and your joy is big, because if all of your conversations are centered around the negative, the stuff you hate with work, the stuff you hate with your relationships, the stuff you hate with the government, like it's you can't let all of that be what consumes all of your conversations, because that's what's going to dominate your thoughts, right?
yeah,
So make
yeah.
room for your joy, for your creativity, for your faith, for your community. Have your boundaries in place. Boundaries are huge, and not
Ooh,
keeping everybody else out, but honor the boundaries with yourself. If you say that for your own mental well-being, you're not checking emails after 7, don't break that promise with yourself and check.
mm,
So making sure that you're keeping up with those things, and in the areas that really matter to you, because I know when we started, we were talking about, the news and how just heavy everything can be right now. So be mindful of what you're giving your time and attention to. And then if
yes.
it is something you're really passionate about, find ways to advocate in a dosage that is helpful to you, but that doesn't overextend you to the point where now you've got racial battle fatigue and compassion fatigue and you can't even be sustainable for your own fight.
Wow,
So,
yes, so
yeah,
good.
continue to find
Yes,
ways, and then it can look a number of different ways. On any given week, I take dance classes, I go to meditation, I have my morning routines, I have prayer calls that I do with friends and family. Like I'm constantly finding ways to add to that cup, because when life inevitably lives and happens, you've got to
yes,
have those resources and tools to fall back on, because that's the last thing you need on your plate when you're already overwhelmed, is to now figure out what you need to do. So
yes.
be proactive. Yeah.
Proactive, proactive. Did you all hear? Be
Proactive.
proactive.
Yeah.
Yes, and intentional, and intentional.
Yeah, for sure.
and intentional. So Amanda, if someone wanted to connect with you,
Yeah.
learn more, or even engage in some of your offerings, the services, or like I did, bring you in front of their teams and
Mhm.
do some work with them, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, I will say I'm extremely active on LinkedIn. If you're connected with me, you know that. So you can find me at any point there, and there's links to my website. You can visit makomindfulness.com/inquire to get on my calendar so that we can have a conversation and see if these resources are a good fit for you. But I'm always open to having a conversation and just love being a resource to give people a different way of thinking about stress management and psychological safety in the workplace. So you can find me, type Amanda Mohammed, LinkedIn, and I will be ready for you.
Yes, and she's on LinkedIn. Yes,
Yeah.
she is. You can DM her there, and so
Yeah.
much value and content she provides on LinkedIn. I'm telling you, there is so much value in content. So you want to search her, you want to follow her, because
Yeah.
then you're going to hear and see more of this in her LinkedIn posts.
For sure.
Amanda Mohammed, my dear friend, love you to death.
Well,
Thank you so much
of
for
course.
being my guest this February. It was invaluable. Thank you so much.
Of
And for
course.
those of you who joined us live, thank you so much for being with us. If you're catching this on the replay, I know you did not regret it and wished you could have been with us live.